part of the world you're listening from. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Board of Advocates for Dignity, I would like to welcome you to the inaugural Advocates for Dignity webinar. Due to COVID-19, as Advocates for Dignity, we are bringing this program to you via the web rather than in person, which may seem to be a most unfortunate incident at first. But when you think about it, because of COVID-19, we have reached an international audience, which we would not have been able to do had we done this program face-to-face in Sydney. Webinars look like a way of the future and are here to stay. It is our one. We'll continue to do many more after this. For those of you who don't know the Advocates for Dignity, we're an advocacy organization that seeks to promote the rule of law, democracy, and to preserve fundamental human rights and liberties with a special focus on Turkey and its citizens abroad. The Advocates for Dignity is a non-profit organization established by Australians of Turkish descent who seek to raise awareness about the injustices taking place to make the wider Australian community aware of the unlawful crackdown of the citizens and the cessation of press freedom in Turkey. Today, the 15th of July, marks the 4th anniversary of the tragic coup attempt in Turkey, whose masterminds are still not known to date. Yes, the Gulen-inspired Hizmet civil society movement and Mr. Gulen himself have been made the scapegoat as the instigators of this so-called coup attempt. However, when you look at who the coup attempt benefited, you will clearly see that it has benefited the Erdogan government the most. On the contrary, the Hizmet movement suffered as a consequence of the coup attempt, in that it had all of its institutions, for example, the 1,000-odd private primary and secondary colleges, the universities, the cultural centers, the tutorial centers, the hospitals, the humanitarian aid organization called Kimse Yok Mu, student dormitories, etc., closing down. As a consequence, and also in some of the Muslim-majority Erdogan-aligned countries around the world where the Hizmet movement had schools taken over by the Turkish government. The 29 that was held like an iftar dinner. So it's very simple reasons. This evening's webinar, titled Turkey's 15th of July coup attempt and its consequences, we'll have a Q&A session with the film producer of the documentary A Gift from God, Jorgen Lorentzen, who will be asked a series of questions by the former ABC radio host John Cleary regarding the coup event and the terrifying consequences as a result to Turkey and its citizens. We'll also show a short film clip from the film during the webinar in the middle of it. Without further ado, I will introduce our facilitator for the webinar, John Cleary. John Cleary is a veteran ABC broadcaster and one of Australia's best-known commentators on religion. In his 30-year career with the ABC, he has worked extensively in both radio and television, but is known principally for his association with Sunday nights on ABC local radio and the Religion Report on ABC Radio. John began his career in Perth, where he was one of the original Compass team on ABC TV and a co-presenter of the philosophy program Meridian on Radio National in the 1990s. And for several years, John has appeared in a regular slot on the ABC Youth Network, Triple J. His 1992 book on the Salvation Army in Australia was awarded the Christian Book of the Year. In 2008, John was the host of the interfaith event held by the Catholic Church in conjunction with World Youth Day and the visit of Pope Benedict XVI. And John is also on the advisory board of Affinity Intercultural Foundation. I will hand over to John to introduce our keynote speaker, Jorgen, and thanks, John.
Mehmet, thank you. Well, the coup events in Turkey referred to by Mehmet brought back to us this week, in stark contrast for many, when the announcement was made by President Erdogan that the great Hagia Sophia, long in its history, founded as a Christian cathedral and then a mosque, and for the best part of the last century, has been a public museum. President Erdogan announced that that would become once again revert to being a mosque, provoking some concern across the world, and particularly among Orthodox Christian communities, the Russian Orthodox and the Greek communities in particular. It brought back into focus many of the events in Turkey, and Jorgen Lorentzen, tonight's filmmaker, is a documentary filmmaker with a distinguished academic career at the University of Oslo, particularly in literature and gender studies. He's a past president of the Norwegian Non-Fiction Writers Association, and just for diversity, in 2008 he was a member of the Norwegian government's New Children's Act committee. He has a long-term interest in gender equity and the prevention of domestic violence. His filmmaking includes, as the producer of K.A.O., a shortlisted for Best Documentary Short at the Oscars in 2017, and as co-producer of Beauty and the Dogs, premiered under Un Certain Regard at Cannes in 2017. Now, I should say, before handing over to Jorgen, that you too can participate in tonight's discussion by sending us questions by Zoom or by using YouTube. Just get on and tap away and we'll put your questions up as they come to us during the program. The film that we're about to speak of, A Gift from God, outlines the events of 2015 in Turkey with a combination of much unseen actuality from the events, descriptions from those caught up in and affected by the moment, and analysis from one or two people who've had a chance to reflect on those events. Jorgen Lorentzen, welcome to this webinar.
Thank you, John. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm very, very happy to have you as my host tonight.
Jorgen, I must say, the stunning opening to your documentary with that sweeping vista over the mass rally as President Erdogan recites the words, a phrase that was eerily familiar for those who are familiar with the political history of Europe, almost echoing the words Ein Volk, ein Reich, ein Führer, so familiar to those associated with Nazi Germany, sets the tone that underlies much of your documentary. Here is not a normal civil society movement, despite the thousands that almost were seen in adulation of President Erdogan and his achievements. That moment takes us into a very powerful reflection of the events of that night. Two questions to open. Why that opening? And secondly, you've got, and I'd like you to elaborate on this, some remarkable actuality film for the events of that night, some not seen before. So one, the emotional opening, and second, the actuality and how you came to get it.
First of all, we have to admit that he is quite good at it. You know, he has learned from history when it comes to how to arrange mass meetings. That's absolutely, you know, he has been for many years now, been training on doing this, you know, gathering people, bussing people in, giving them gifts, giving out flags to wave and caps to wear in the entrances to the places where he is having these mass meetings. And you know, I've seen him coming into to this arena where a lot of people are gathered, and it's like he's coming in like a rock star. You know, he's like walking back and forth on the stage, pointing to people, waving, you know, and it's like a very, very special mass feeling being there. And the way he's meeting his people, you know, the people that support him. But in many ways, they are also paid to be there. We have to be aware of that. You know, they have over the countries they are giving out gifts and goodie bags for people when they're showing up. When it comes to the second part, the opening, it was very clear from the beginning that we had to open with the happening on the Bosporus Bridge. because the bridge over Bosporus has been made to the symbol of the coup attempt. Erdogan made his first year anniversary there, the second year anniversary. He was sort of celebrating the victory of the people and the government on the bridge. And he renamed the bridge, as we know, into the 15th of July bridge. So I thought immediately that we have to start here and we have to find out what happened. What happened actually? We have seen some glimpse on television, and then I started really working detailed with journalists, with people sending me clips from their filmed. And in the end, I got a long film from one guy that filmed it from like 10 o'clock in the evening, the whole night until 7 o'clock in the morning. And parts of that I cannot use, but it reveals even worse things that I have shown you. And when you look at it from 9 o'clock in the evening until 7 o'clock in the morning, you see that the story here is quite different, you know. First of all, I have seen that they are some of the soldiers are shooting with rubber bullets. I've seen people are falling down. They're getting up again and getting out of the civil people that are moving out. But I cannot say that they're not shooting sharp. They can also shoot sharp. I'm not sure about that, you know. And I've also seen that the cannons are shooting, but I cannot see that people are falling because of that. So the amount of deaths and how they were killed is also unclear. And I've also very clearly shown clips that Sadat, his Erdogan's private army, we can say, they were there and they were regulating the masses and sending the masses in and out. So a lot of things here are arranged, and there are still things that we need to tell that we haven't told about what happened on that bridge.
What was remarkable to me is that some of the material you showed is unarguable. That is, the group of soldiers who were on the bridge was a small group, maybe a platoon or a couple of platoons, and they were
not more than 50 people, not more than 50, and they were not soldiers, they were cadets, you know, with a couple of officers.
Then the other thing that's quite stunning is the police who arrive at the bridge don't actually act like police. They act more like casual security guards who say, oh, well, look, you know, if that's what you want to do. As a crowd arrives, and that crowd seems to be prepared for what they're going to face. That's for anybody who's been to Istanbul, that is a very long bridge. And to get a crowd like that walking across the bridge that big to confront a very small group of soldiers, it has the immediate effect of something that has been put together quite clearly. You can tell that this is not a coup in any sense of the word. It's a gathering of few soldiers on the bridge who then get the police allow them to go and be attacked by a mob, and some of them quite violently.
No, it's terrible to watch it. It's really, really terrible and devastating to watch what happened there. And some of the groups, the people are there, and the police, I know that hundreds of police were right around the corner. They didn't interfere at all.
So these cadets initially think they are going to help save the country from an ISIS-backed coup.
Yes.
What they find very soon is they are being portrayed, or they are being attacked by a mob and then portrayed as the coup perpetrators.
Yes.
You take us into a discussion with the family of one of these soldiers who was savagely beaten to death. What was their understanding of their son's role?
They are, of course, 100% sure that their son are innocent. He would never, ever participate in a coup against the Turkish state. You know, he was there as a cadet, wanted to go to the military because he was a proud young man, wanted to take part in a nation that he loved. And all these cadets, they are the same situation. They didn't know anything, you know. And what can you do as a cadet if you get an order, go out to the bridge and defend it? You cannot do anything, you know. If not, you're
There's
put in.
nothing- They get there and there's nothing there to defend.
No, and there's nothing there to defend. But they said it was a possible terrorist attack. That's why they were there and stopped one side of the bridge.
Yeah.
So then suddenly they are in a different situation, and that the people are attacking them, and they don't know what's happening. And you can see on the clips that they are in despair. They're not really shooting most of the time. We can see they're shooting above the head of the people. We see that they're shooting with rubber bullets. We see that they, in the end, 6:30 in the morning, they just lay their weapon down, give themselves to the police, and then the police disappears.
Yeah.
Then the police suddenly leaves the scenario and let these crazy guys, which are prepared to attack them, just go there and beat the shit out of them. It's awful. How is it possible? They are young kids, innocent kids.
One of the most moving moments is there, 5 minutes into the film, as a father holds up a photograph, a graphic photograph of his son with his face beaten to a pulp.
Yeah.
And says, my son died. Yeah. And on the other side of the photograph is his son in full uniform.
Yeah.
The tragedy of that family is immense. And they are prepared to speak.
Yeah. They wanted to speak. They have nothing to lose. They said, we have lost our son. They can do whatever they want with us. They are a very brave family. They were speaking openly about everything. And they're speaking also in Turkish news about it. And they want to follow the case because they want to know what really happened with my son. So they want to go to the European Court of Human Rights with a case. And I think we all should support them doing that, because it will be also a case that will open up what is happening with all the others.
Let me go quickly through the other two major events of that night that you focus on. One is the strange actions of the Navy. That is, the Navy are also alerted that there's a potential coup and their ships are ordered out to sea. But when they get out to sea, all they're instructed to do is sail around in circles, while the Admiral in charge of the Navy all of a sudden disappears for 4 hours. He says he was sitting in his car somewhere.
Yeah, he said that in his when he's witnessing in a court case, he is telling what he was doing. So he's telling it himself openly that he was sitting in his car at a parking lot on the European side of Istanbul and waiting.
For what?
And it's quite amazing when all his ships are out sailing. And the captains, they don't know what to do. What are we going to do? And I've spoken to several of the ship commanders, and they said that they were basically thinking about their own ship. I have, as a ship commander, you have one obligation: you have to take care of your ship and your people on the boat. So they were sailing around, and when I got access, as a journalist, this is really interesting. When I got access to all the movements of the Turkish Navy, and when I saw these movements back and forth and around, I didn't know if I should laugh or cry. What's happening here?
So those movements
make total chaos.
Those movements make no sense to the sailors. The sailors eventually the next morning get back to port. The Admiral all of a sudden reappears. And then many of them find themselves arrested.
Yeah. And they didn't know.
I don't know.
They arrested some of them, and they arrested more during the next days to come. But they didn't know, why do they arrest him and not me? Or what's going on here? And of course, now we know that these arrests are basically based on different lists, ready-made lists they had for who to arrest and who not to arrest.
Which takes me to the next key moment there. You actually produce a document that was circulated that evening that outlines events that could not possibly have taken place. That is, it seems to be a pseudo document prepared by someone who knew these events were going to take place. Yeah. But strangely enough, some of the events it records are the events of a coup, but a coup that never took place, because the events actually never took place. And yet on this document, which was used in court to arrest many of the people who were then charged. A remark, how did you get that?
No, I don't have any other answer than that this document by Jorgen must have been ready-made, because it was sent out already 1 o'clock to different areas of the nation of Turkey to tell them you can start arrests. So they needed a document to base the arrests on.
Yes.
And say you are a part of this coup attempt, so we can arrest you. So I don't have any other explanation.
But it actually names times and places where events never took place.
Yeah, and this is also the crazy things about the timing, because it says 1 o'clock in the document from Jorgen, but actually said no, that was wrong. It was 7 o'clock. But it makes it worse. At 7 o'clock, you knew what happened and what didn't happen, and you don't write things that didn't happen 7 o'clock in the morning. So this is a very strange document, and it should be researched closely, and I would love to have an interview with Jorgen about it.
We probably talked enough about that stunning opening, those first 6 to 7 minutes of the film. Maybe it's time that we gave people a preview and we had a look at the way the film unfolds, the direction of the film, in just a brief preview, and then we come back and talk a little bit more about it and some of the wider elements involved. So let's throw now a little from Jorgen Lorentzen's film, A Gift of God.
Adli tıptan bu şekilde linç edilmiş halde adli tıptan aldım. Ben oğlumu bu şekilde teslim etmedim.
4 tanesini öldürdük. 4'ünü öldürdük. Daha 5'inci geldi.
The coup attempt gave Erdogan almost complete power.
Türkiye'nin gittiği yön bir diktatörlüktür. Dinci bir diktatörlüktür. İslamik bir diktatörlüktür. Faşizan bir diktatörlüktür.
He is the new red line. You cannot say anything against him. I mean, what are you going to do? If they want to arrest you, they'll arrest you, basically.
On the very night that the coup attempt unfolded, the mass arrests began.
Ama geri dönerken ya yakalanacak mıyım, tutuklanacak mıyım? Çünkü herhangi hatalı bir şey yapmadım. Tamamen bir sivil soykırım nesnesi.
How was it possible to begin arresting people so soon?
They have a list, a long list, and it's a purge process.
This is not the way you do a coup. So we all knew that this was a little bit fishy from the beginning.
For 3 years, we've worked intensively to try to understand what really happened.
Dolayısıyla Allah'ın lütfu derken kendisi için tarihsel bir fırsatın ortaya çıktığını gördü ve bunu gerçekleştirdi zaten.
Now, I am going to tell a different story.
Lorentzen, A Gift from God. Jorgen, perhaps it's appropriate to ask you before we actually invite people to share some questions with us. And if you have questions, share them with us via YouTube or from the on the Zoom channel. Jorgen, what sparked your interest in making this documentary?
Because I was there, right outside of Istanbul that night. I was there with my family, and then we very early got a call from our aunt in Ankara saying flights are flying, jets are flying very low over the city now. So you have to follow television. And then we were sitting together with friends and family and watching, shifting between the different channels and seeing what happened minute by minute and trying to understand what is really this, and I think it's very clearly that we all felt the same, like Henry Barkey is saying. It was a little bit fishy from the beginning, because, and then one of the older guys in my company said that, no, this is not a coup. I know what a coup is. I've been through 2 different coups in Turkey, So this cannot be a coup. And then as a journalist, I said, wow, this is spooky. Here I have to start working on something and try to find out what happened. And since that, I've been working day and night, trying to follow the different tracks. What happened with the bombing of the parliament, which was absurd. It was no reason for when you're doing a coup attempt to bomb that after the coup is finished. What was the bombing outside of Erdogan Palace? What happened in Marmaris, which is a strange case. Of course, I did use a long time to find out and try to put the pieces together, what happened on the bridge. And all these different things that happened all around. And still there are open spaces here. I cannot tell the story fully about the parliament. It's strange. About Marmaris, we have put together more pieces now, know more about what's happening there, but still things are unclear because we don't find the right people that want to speak about it. And I need people that were there that can open up, the discourse or the dialogue about what really happened at that place that night.
One other thing that we should talk about now for just a few moments before we take questions. And if you want to ask questions, please feel free to type them into Zoom or into YouTube to the quick Q&A, and we'll do our best to get to them. It was mentioned by Mehmet Sarel in the introduction. Erdogan has blamed the Hizmet movement and Fethullah Gülen for the coup. You do take us into the background of that in the middle of the program. You say, well, who is this person that Erdogan is blaming for all his problems? Yeah. What's your understanding of the relationship between Erdogan and Fethullah Gülen, the founder of the Hizmet movement, the mentor of the Hizmet movement? What's your understanding of their relationship and why this tension?
Yeah. Of course, we all know that they worked together for a long time, since 2002. And then it was a shift and a split between them in 2013. And after that, Erdogan has been after the Hizmet movement, starting closing newspapers and so on before the coup attempt. And he was very, very quick to state that it was the Hizmet movement that was behind the coup. Already 12:30 in the night, where I think no one really understood what was happening. He knew sort of this group is behind it. And then he started arresting people 1 o'clock from the Hizmet movement. So and the thing here is, which is strange, is that, okay, let us think that some officers related to the Gülen movement, they were behind the coup. If that is this case, then it's strange to start arresting nurses, teachers, professors, far out in the country that had nothing to do with the coup attempt. They couldn't have anything to do with it. Okay, you're a member of a group, a network, but I mean, it's a huge purge, and he wanted to get rid of the Gülen and the Gülenists for many years, and now he got the chance, and then he just cleansed it, as he's saying that night. Now we have the chance to cleanse our organization and the military.
The Gülen movement has a background in Sufi Islam, which is Turkish in its nature and traditions. Erdogan seems to draw his religious ideology, if you like, more from the Sunni, the Muslim Brotherhood and that tradition. Do you think at some point a decision is made that one or other of these sides is going to become dominant, and it's really first out of the block that's going to win this battle?
It can perhaps looks like that from a certain point of view, but if you focus on Erdogan in this case, we know from early on that he's a very, very smart power politician. He knows how to use power. He knows how to put one group against another group, and then use them all in his interests. And he has been surviving so many situations because of this, and huge amount of corruption has been going on for years, and people know about it, but he's covering it up with different situations and happenings.
And was it perhaps the trigger that when the members of Gülen's movement some of them began to say, hang on, there are a couple of corruption issues here that had to be dealt with, that at that time Erdogan decides, okay.
Yeah, the so-called 1725 December 2030, then we had sort of the crack was clearly there. It started a little bit earlier than that, but then it was very, very clearly that they were going apart. But for me, it was also important that I started to try to get information from security services, from NATO, from Norwegian security, from German security, from American security, and all of them said that we have no ideas, that we don't really think that Gulen is behind this, you know, and they stated that very clearly. So when they stated very clearly that they don't think Gulen is behind it, then of course it's opened up a very interesting space for a journalist to find out, so what happened then, you know.
And of course,
still the international intelligence services, they don't answer on that question.
And of course, the differences between these groups is more than religion. It has to do with orientation. That is, the Sufi tradition, the Gulenists are Western oriented. Erdogan is more towards the old Ottoman Caliphate, the Sunni Muslim Brotherhood tradition.
Yeah.
So you really have a deep fissure there that has to do with the fundamental direction of the nation.
Absolutely. As a member of the Brotherhood, you know, he looks in a different direction, and we see also what he's doing the last years is really trying to go for strategic power in the area, to be the Sultan of the whole area. I think it's I think that will be very difficult for him, because he's not very popular, you know, anymore. He was quite popular 10 years ago, but now he's not that popular anymore, you know, by the Arabs or the Iranians or Egypt. You know, he has lost power in Egypt also, so he's not very popular anymore. So I think that's a dream he has, and he's acting crazy because of it, but it's
yes, and
accessible.
And his link with the Russians is not going to be helped by the recent Hagia Sophia affair, because Russia and Putin are very strong in cultivating the Orthodox Church, and the Orthodox Church are outraged.
But we have to be clear that whatever Erdogan is doing, and he has been doing that since 2002, is to please his core national audience in Turkey, you know. So he has a good relationship with Putin. He has a good relationship with Trump. He's speaking with both of them back and forth, you know, but everything is to please his audience, in his voters, his core voters in Turkey. So that's why he's doing these things, because, and then he also keeps the focus away from the economical deep crisis Turkey is in.
Let's talk about some of the characters that you met. One of the indicators of this fundamental East-West fissure is when you meet some NATO officers, some Turkish NATO officers who are actually in Norway, because they have to become refugees themselves. How did they explain the events?
You know, it's interesting to see all this, because the Norwegians are just representatives of all the close to 300 NATO officers that was purged immediately after the coup attempt. They were in Norway when it happened. They have nothing with a coup attempt to do. They were trained by NATO and has been a part of the NATO system for many, many years. And for them, it's impossible to understand really why they were purged in the beginning. And then, of course, they see that what has happened is that all the westernized NATO officers, NATO-related, NATO-trained officers are purged, all of them. And they are replaced by more Eurasian-friendly officers in the military. So, of course, they see this as a shift from west to east and to a closer alliance with Russia. And this has also happened, you know, because it was a deep conflict between Russia and Turkey after the shoot-down of the jet on the border of Syria in December 2015. And Then right after the coup attempt, Putin and Erdogan became best friends. And we know that also Russians have been in one way or another involved and been there on the spot, you know, when this happened on the 15th of July. But it's hard. I cannot really tell yet the full story about the Russian involvement here. But for Erdogan, of course, it's good to talk with Putin also. And Putin needs allies. Putin is really in need of good allies. And for him to be an ally with Turkey is wonderful. You know, then you have direct access to open sea through Bosporus, and it's perfect for Putin. So I can understand that very well. But it was a devastating moment for all these, you know, officers that have been defending and been working for the Turkish nation for their whole life. And suddenly they were just kicked out because of change of tactics in Erdogan's head.
The other person, of course, we should have mentioned that you do take the trouble to speak to is the founder of the Hizmet movement, Fethullah Gulen himself. How does he explain his relationship with Erdogan?
I think he felt huge despair because of the situation now. And as he says, he feel that he was fooled in a way by the alliance with Erdogan. He's saying that he trusted the guy, he believed in him, but he's saying also that this is a huge mistake, you know, to trust him and believe him and support him and help him, because Erdogan would never ever be in power like he has been since 2002 without the Gulen movement and the support from Hizmet. They were huge helpers for Erdogan's way to power from 2002 and onward.
Because for those,
so I can understand that he is very, very sorry about that now.
Yes, for those who don't know, the Gulen movement in Turkey was essentially a civil society movement oriented towards the West and dialogue, and so had a huge impact on the society movement.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, if you go back and start talking about the Ergenekon case and things like that, also members of the Gulen movement were not totally innocent here. They were playing the power game together with Erdogan and arresting top officers, innocent officers in the Ergenekon case. So they have something to work on too when it comes to their history.
Let's talk a little more. I've got some questions that have been sent to us. There's a couple of people very interested in this document that lays out there, and the person who provided you with the document, and who he is, and what's his game.
Which of the document of Jorgen, or?
Yeah, Jorgen, I think.
Yeah. This document I got from a journalist that has been fleeing the country, and he confirmed the truthfulness of the document by confronting Jorgen about it, and got a reply that yes, we can confirm the document, but the answer that the timing was wrong. It was not 1 o'clock like it says at night, 1 a.m. in the night, like it says in the document, but it was 7 a.m. in the night. That's their reply to it. And after that, they haven't really replied very much about the documents.
Mm-hmm. It sounds from those who are linked to it that this is, well, almost impossible to be conceived of as anything other than pre-planned.
I have to come to that conclusion too, you know. It absolutely seems like, even though we haven't confirmed it, everything points to that conclusion.
Why then is Gulen the scapegoat? Is a question again from one of our listeners. We've touched on this briefly, but why do you think Gulen is a particular scapegoat?
Because people belonging to the Gulen movement, they were very strong in the judiciary. They had a lot of influence over people in Turkey. They were popular. They had a huge network, And Erdogan, when we come to 2016, he has basically control of the military. He had basically control over the parliament and a lot of the different power institutions in Turkey, but it didn't control the judiciary, and he felt also like they trying to go for him. He was afraid of them also, that they would give more documents that perhaps could take him down. So I think he felt after 2013 December, he felt it was absolutely necessary to find a way to get rid of the Hizmet movement and their influence.
Gülen is now in exile, of course, and a number of the people you talk to are themselves reluctant exiles. And there's 2 or 3 quite moving statements from people who are not only reluctant exiles, but actually have the intellectual depth to reflect on the events. What did you gain from them about the understanding of not only the impact of this coup, but its significance for Turkey as a country?
Of course, when I spoke with the officers, I got a lot of insight into the details of what happened, the movements of that night and the days after. And when it comes to the family, it's also, how they can follow, arrest, torture totally innocent people. They had this family. There was a sort of linked to the Gülen movement, but not very active at all. And they were working as civil servant in Turkish, the Turkish state, and they were imprisoned and very roughly treated, and had to flee, crossing the Meric, like thousands, tens of thousands of others that are feeling that their lives are in threat. And it was also a way of getting into the feelings and emotions of people in that situation. We got very close to the family and understanding their situation very clearly. So it was a human. They're important to understand the human parts of this. They're single people, they're children that are being purged and treated badly. So I think it's very important to have that part, the human part as a part of when we're talking about strategic and politics and everything. There are hundreds of thousands of people here.
You talk to 1 or 2 academics and intellectuals, but who also have a Turkish background, and you can see it's not just a matter of history for them; it is touching them deeply as well.
Yeah.
Let's reflect. We've got 1 or 2 other questions which take us back a little way, but it's probably worth asking them. Dorgu Perenchek, that the list of arrests that happened straight after the coup was prepared 7 years earlier. And again, it's going to the question of, well, this is more evidence, it seems, that things were planned. But who is Perenchek? Explain who he is and his party. It's the Vatan Party, is that it?
Vatan Party. Yeah, he's a very interesting guy. Actually, it was really nice meeting him. He was very, very open, very friendly, and talkative. He can say things that others, if they say the same, they will be put in prison immediately. And this makes him an interesting figure. Of course, I know from studying his history that he has a close relationship with Russia and China. So, and I know also that he was setting up meetings between the leadership of AKP, the ruling party, and people from Putin's government during this last 6 months before the coup attempt. So he has a lot of influence. He's very, very central for the relationship with Russia, and he is untouchable. And he can say things about when he don't like what Erdogan is doing. He's saying it, he's saying it clearly, directly out. I think Perinçek because he has influence in important circles. A lot of the members in his party are top officers or ex-top officers and top bureaucrats. They are a small party, but an influential party. And he's quite open. He thinks that he can control Erdogan, I think, which I think is a little bit of but I don't think Erdogan is very happy for Doğu Perinçek, but I think he needs him. He is important for the link to Russia and to China.
Where does Iran fit in this?
Perinçek is also very, very close to Iran. And we know that there has been very important trade, gold and oil trade between Iran and Turkey going on for years. And Iran has been important for the Turkish, feeding the Turkish economy. So Iran is sort of a strong nation, big neighbor. And I think Erdogan wants Iran to take part in the creation of the huge Islamic union. So that's why he wants to be close to Iran, and of course it has been important for oil and economy.
Let's touch briefly on the wider political implications. You've mentioned the relationship with Russia, and we've just talked about Iran. But Western democracies, initially, many of us, and you were probably, you probably spoke to your Norwegian colleagues in the first few hours after the coup. Most people accepted what was being said, and it took some journalists around the world some few days to catch up with the events in a way which led to questions. I know from my experience at the ABC, we called a gathering of the news editors about 4 or 5 days after the coup and said, look, there are questions arising here. And the ABC News division took that seriously and began to ask other questions. But it really did take a little while for other countries to catch on. Initially, the US, did you see that balance as it unfolded for you?
Yeah, I think a lot of the journalists were confused how to interpret what was going on. And then after the coup attempt, Erdogan feeded journalists all over the world, feeded news channels with material that was telling that it is the Gulen and the Gulen movement that is behind it. And still I can meet journalists that think that Gulen and the Gulen movement is behind the coup attempt. You know, so still there are confusion about what happened, and to a large degree, Erdogan has won. I think he has won the war with the media, that they sort of believe him, you know, or they don't really care about it very much anymore.
And this takes us really to the significance of your document, because I've got a broad interest in the area, not a terribly specific one. I visited Turkey as a tourist, and I've had associations with people of the Hizmet movement and the broader Islamic community in Australia as a journalist in religion. But your documentary seems to be one of the first that says, no, we've got to analyse this from the perspective of those of you around the world who may not know about these events.
Absolutely.
Do you see that as the key role of this documentary, really, to be one of the first to open up the issue in a broader context?
You know, it's two things that I think is important. First of all, of course, to tell the story, what really happened. That Erdogan's story is not the truth about what happened that night and the days after. It's a totally different story that we have to tell, and we have to spread it, and we have to inform people that how is it possible that a guy can do or can just blame someone to grab the total power in a NATO allied country? You know, what is this happening in Spain, you know, or in England or whatever, you know? But it seems like almost the rest of Europe and NATO, they don't care. They have given up about talking about it. And this is also because Turkey is so important strategically. And the NATO is, of course, very, very afraid of losing Turkey. And because he has threatened many times with saying that I'm leaving NATO If you keep on going like that, I'm leaving NATO. You know, that's what he's saying. Then he can go to Russia instead. But he doesn't really want to be totally under Putin's control either, you know. So that's why he's sort of going back and forth all the time. Second, I would say what is important for me is that I want more people to talk, because I still have open spaces. You know, the puzzle is not finished for me. Still, I don't know what happened here and there, and we don't have the, let us say, the final document, if you can call it that can say, okay, this is what happened. These are the guys that are behind the coup attempt. Because it's still open. It's still an open question. I'm quite sure that Gulen was not behind it. Then what happened? Is it a group of Gulenists together with some Kremlists that did a coup attempt in despair of what happened in Turkey and the military? Or is it arranged by any other ways? Yes. So I want more people to come out, and we are ready to continue working, you know, on this case.
Western democracies are still tolerant of Erdogan, but one has to say that it seems that Erdogan is classified by some as simply another example of the wave of populist leaders that veer to the right politically, but we have to get used to and perhaps manage over time. What you're suggesting is, no, Erdogan is something different. Yes, he is that. He's taken advantage of the populist wave, the conservative wave, but he's something else as well. He's a strategic thinker in terms of his ambitions for Turkey, and this goes back a long way, and he's been able to march his way towards this over a very long time, and we underestimate him if we take him as just another populist right-winger.
Right, I agree with that, and we have to note a couple of things. Turkey has the next largest army in NATO after US. Turkey has stationed nuclear weapons in Turkey. They are American nuclear weapons, but they are there, you know, 15 to 20 nuclear warheads. So it's a dangerous place, and it's a huge country, and it's a huge power. And we also have to understand it related to the situation in the Middle East, because Middle East is in a huge crisis. It's a big chaos there. Afghanistan is in war. Yemen is totally destroyed. Iraq is in war and no state. Syria totally destroyed. Libya. So either you have countries which are in war and there are no state, effective state, or you have a growing tyrannical or dictatorship countries like Iran, Turkey, and you see now the movement in Lebanon and Egypt. So difficult situation for, I think, Europe to handle, how to handle now. And you see Trump is drawing back. He doesn't really want to have anything to do with the Middle East anymore. I don't think he understands anything of what's going on there. So you see, it's a very difficult area to work with.
It does mean that the American elections actually begin to play some significance in this.
Yes.
Because the Americans can't step away from it ultimately. Someone like Biden and the Democrats, if they do come to power, will have to rethink the whole strategic environment.
Yeah, it will be. But now it's perhaps looks like he will not win. Next time we'll see. Cross our fingers.
We're drawing to a close. We're going to have to finish up in just a few moments' time. But what about yourself in this? You've got family connections, I understand, with Turkey. This has had to be an act of some considered bravery on the part of yourself and your family. How do you feel about your position at the moment?
I can tell you that when we had the premiere of the film here in Norway, the Turkish ambassador in Norway contacted the foreign minister and tried to stop the film. So he had got a message from Ankara that he should try to stop the film from being screened. Of course, then the foreign ministry of Norway had to sort of teach him a little bit about how democracy works. that it was not a film made by the Norwegian state, so we have freedom of speech, so they couldn't do anything about the screening of the film. But it tells you something about the situation and how they react. And I'm very also sorry that after the screening and after the launching of the film, the ambassador contacted us and said, from now on, you have to understand that you're an enemy of the state of Turkey. And for me, that is also explaining some of the way they are thinking and moving, and how afraid they are of the truth. You know, they are very, very afraid that more people will dig into this and start asking difficult questions. And they are very afraid that more people will start speaking, because there are people that knows what happened, you know. If you could talk with Hulusi Akar or Hakan Fidan or any of the other central people in Turkey, it would be wonderful, you know, to get their stories.
You have friends and acquaintances and family associations with Turkey.
Yes.
Have there been any repercussions for those who had connections with the film, as we
no
understand yet?
No, nothing, and I'm very happy for that. There have been some threats, and you know, the trolls, Erdogan trolls, are there on the internet, but that was expected. But nothing more than that.
Jorgen Lorentzen, it's a challenging and inspiring film. We do thank you for your participation tonight, and I'd recommend.
Thank you, John.
Anybody who's interested in this in the broader context, it's an important film. Jorgen, thanks so much for joining us, and now I'll hand back to Mehmet Sarıl. Mehmet.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, John and Jorgen. Thank you, Jorgen, for the great insight you have given our listeners on the so-called coup attempt in Turkey back in 15th of July 2016, now 4 years ago. I watched your documentary 3 times now, and I have to admit, I find it very informative and very objective. You have viewpoints from all circles from Turkey, not just the Gulen movement, but from left wing, right wing, from many different groups, and that's objectivity is very important. You even went out of your way to interview Erdogan, the president of Turkey, who refused to be interviewed. So that shows that you wanted this to be as objective as possible.
And I have to say, I'm very sorry that he said no. I would love to interview him.
Yeah,
that would have been a coup.
Well, Dor Perinçek, I'm surprised he took the interview, but he loves being on TV, so and on any documentary. Yeah, so he would say no to, you'll say yes to every interview, and he's very open. I was very surprised how openly Dor Perinçek spoke in the documentary. The fact that you have and John as well, for the background you have given on Turkey and the characters involved and the insightful questions you asked Jorgen, I have to admit it educated our listeners on this topic in a great sense. Thank you for your time, John. It's been great.
Pleasure.
And as some of you may know, we conducted a gala cinema screening of a documentary film called Erdogan, Dictate His Republic, back in October 2018 in both Sydney and Melbourne. That film was a film that was produced in America by 2 producers who happened to be brothers of Armenian background, but American born, who had an interest in Turkey because their parents were born in Turkey. And they also did a very similar screening. And we actually showed that at cinemas outlets in Sydney and Melbourne. In a similar fashion, towards the end of this year, we want to be hosting a gala cinema screening of the documentary A Gift from God across all major capital cities in Australia, including Sydney, Melbourne, Canberra, Perth, Adelaide, and Brisbane. And we'll also have, hopefully, Jorgen in person with us.
So it'll be a huge pleasure.
Please watch your say that. And Jorgen, hopefully COVID-19 travel restrictions will cease by October, November timeframe, which is our spring in Sydney, in Australia. And we'll love to host you at that time. And finally, I'd like to thank our listeners for taking time from their busy schedule to watch our inaugural webinar, one of many more to come. And I look forward to seeing you at our next event, either virtually or in person. Good night, everyone. Thank you.